A few years ago, after a day of golf with my uncle and some of his buddies, we went to the Cardinal game. After the game, we walked over to Mike Shannon's restaurant. And as we were sitting there, my uncle was asked, "Why are you hanging out with your nephew?" To most people, that wouldn't be a common occurrence. But I'll never forget my uncle's response. And to me, it's the greatest compliment that I've ever been given. He said, "If I can't hang out with my brother, I'm okay with hanging out with Ash, because Ash is just like Rick. It's like being with my brother." And in my opinion, there's no greater man other than Jesus that has walked this earth than my dad. Even for being a Waltonville Spartan, there's nobody better. And to have my uncle say that being with me is like being with my dad, it doesn't get any better than that. And a similar statement is made in John chapter 14. And in chapter 14, verse 8, Philip said to him, "Lord, show us the Father, and it is enough for us." Jesus said to him, "Have I been with you so long, and you still do not know me, Philip? Whoever has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, 'Show us the Father'? Do you not believe that I am in the Father, and the Father is in me? The words that I say to you, I do not speak on my own authority, but the Father who dwells in me does his works. Believe me that I am in the Father, and the Father is in me, or else believe on account of the works themselves." Now, I may be like my dad, and I may get a compliment like that, but it's not the same. I'm not my dad. As much as I strive to be like him, we are two separate people. The theme of the Gospel of John, written by the disciple whom Jesus loved, John himself, the theme of that book is Jesus is God. They are one. And that's something that we can't wrap our human minds around, to see how God and Jesus are the same person. Philip struggled with it. And we'll get to John 14 later, because it's a very, very important passage that we're going to spend a lot of time talking about this morning. But Philip didn't even get it. "Show us the Father." And Jesus says, "I am the Father. We are one." We can't comprehend that. It is. Now, the Gospel of John starts out with the genealogy. In fact, the book of John, I think we can split up into 3 separate books. That first book is the genealogy. And most people will say, well, it's not like the other genealogies in the Bible or Matthew, Mark, and Luke in the Gospels. But John does give us a genealogy. In John chapter 1, verse 1 through 5, it says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." What John is saying there, in some kind of confusing speak, is the genealogy of Christ. The Word is in reference to Jesus. He is the Word. It kind of harkens back to the very beginning. While the other genealogies talk about Mary and Joseph and Abraham and David and the Davidic line that we've talked a lot about over this series, John goes even further. He goes back to the very beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 is where John starts with, and he says, even before then, Jesus was there. He is God, with God. They are one in the very beginning, and there was nothing that was created without Christ being part of it. And chapter 1 of John gives us that genealogy. It tells us who he is, where he came from, and the testimonies about his ministry and who he's come from. Now, I said it right there. Jesus is God. But it's not just Jesus acting it out. He tells people. In fact, 7 times throughout the book of John, Jesus makes a statement. We'll harken back to Exodus. When Moses is on Mount Sinai and God's told him, "I need you to go tell Pharaoh to let my people go," Moses says, "Well, who do I tell them sent me? People aren't going to listen to me." And God simply said, "Tell them, I am sent you." 7 different times Jesus says, "I am. I'm the bread of life. I am the way. I am the resurrection and life." In fact, there's a point blank time where they say, on what authority do you have this? And he says, I am. He's claiming who he is. He's telling them who he is. He is God. So, chapter 1 gives us the first book. The second book is the signs pointing to the I am, who he is. And it's through his miracles, that passage we read there as Jesus is telling Philip of he and God are one. He tells him, if my words aren't enough, then my miracles should be telling you, I am capable of this. I am who I say I am God. Chapters 2 through 12 give us those signs, the teachings, the miracles, the display of who he is. Chapters 13 through 21 give us the book of glory, the death, burial, resurrection, and what's to come. See, a lot of people want to stop at the death, burial, resurrection, but Jesus himself says there's a whole lot more to come. And I'm coming back, and it's going to be great. You won't believe the things that are going to happen. John chapter 14, we've already talked about the one passage, but this is one of my favorite passages, and we've talked about a lot of this. And this is my go-to passage for funerals. I know that seems weird, but a funeral is a celebration, if you know where you're going. It can also be a very hard sermon to preach because if the guy was a dirtbag, it's hard to say. We know where he is, but if we have hope and we have faith and we have trust in who Jesus says he is, and he says, I am that I am the Son of God, I am God himself, and I believe that, and I have him in my life, then John chapter 14 gives us great hope. Let not your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, that where I am, you may also be. And you know the way to where I am going. And I love that passage. Jesus tells them, I'm leaving. I'm going to prepare a place for you. And I'm going to go back for you. I'm preparing a mansion up in heaven for you. By the power of God, Christ ascends back into heaven. And He's created a room just for us. A mansion, a room, a home, to where we get to spend eternity. And the best part about that promise is He's not just preparing for it, He's going to return and get us and take us back to be with Him. That way we can be in the presence of God. Remember what the Garden of Eden was. In Genesis chapter 1 through 3, we learned that Adam and Eve are in the Garden of Eden with God, daily walking with Him. And that's what made it a paradise. When Christ returns and takes us, we get to go to the room He prepared for us there. But we're getting to go spend eternity with Him, walking daily. And that's true paradise. And that's what is the great promise that we have there, is we have eternity in Him in heaven. Verse 5 says, Thomas said to Him, Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way? Here comes another one of those I ams. Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And this goes back to verse 8. If you had known me, you would have known my Father also. And from now on, you do know Him, and you have seen Him. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, have we seen Him? Do we know Him? I said a minute ago that a funeral can be a very trying time for a preacher if the person that has passed on didn't know Him. Now, I use that time to preach to the people that are there and saying you need to change your lives and get right with God and accept the promise that's there waiting for us, because that promise is for everyone. Have you accepted? Have you changed your life? Do you know the Father? Because the only way you know the Father is if you know the Son, because the Father and the Son are one. I think we forget. We get wrapped up in the love of God. But Jesus is calling us to love Him. Now, He told us in Matthew chapter 22, the greatest commandment is this: love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And the second is just like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. He tells us the law hinges on those two commands. And what that's saying is you can't love God if you don't love everyone. If you don't show love and kindness and compassion to everybody else, how can you say that you know who God is? Because if you don't show love and kindness to everybody else, then you don't understand the love and kindness and mercy that was shown to you on the cross. And through the promise that God gave us, that He is going to return for us and take us to where we will be with Him for eternity. John chapter 14, Jesus continues in verse 15. He says, if you love me, you will keep my commands. If you love me, you will keep my commands. It's simple. If we know who He is, if we truly know who He is, then we are a changed creation, like the Apostle Paul tells us through Romans, that we're a changed creation, that the old is gone and new has come, and we know who He is, and we keep His commands. So what is this command? How do we show the world that we know who Christ is, that we know who God is, that we have Him in our lives? Chapter 15, verse 12, this is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love is no one than this, that someone laid down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends. For all that I have heard from my Father I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you, that you should go and bear fruit, and your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask in the Father in my name, He will give you. These things I command you, so that you will love one another. It's simple. The message of the Gospel of John is twofold. One, Jesus and God are one. Two, if you want to know who the Father is, you have to know the Son. And if you want to know the Son, you have to show love. You have to have love. You have to exude love. And mean it. Love can just be a word, or it can be a verb that is an action of showing the same love that He showed us. And as He told us there in chapter 14, He died on the cross for us. And in chapter 15, He tells us, no greater love than to lay down your life. We have that love because God came to earth in the form of a human being named Jesus Christ, lived and breathed, and He died, and He rose again to prepare a place for us. And if you want to see that place, all you need is love. Have a great week.